with also the number of people here. Uh, First of all, thank you very much for attending, even though the weather is definitely demanding in different ways. And also I'll come back to thanking my fellow debate people up here. We will be talking about Brexit and what next. Is this a challenge for Europe? Will there be other exits? And if so, why? And is there anything that we can learn from Brexit? First of all, just shortly, my name is Stine Bosse. In English, normally I say Christine, because otherwise it becomes Stein, which perhaps I don't really appreciate. But let me just shortly introduce my colleagues here. First of all, let's start with you, Aage Staun. Aage is, you can say many things, but the reason that you're here is that you actually believe that the EU is not worth being a part of, or how should I say it? You are in the movement of people's movements against the EU. And next to me we have an experienced man, Richard Morris. You are now the member of the board of EMI, the International European Movement. Is that correct?
Yes, as well as the European Movement UK as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have grown, I believe. The European Movement UK is now bigger than it was.
It's ironically, it's the biggest pro-European movement in Europe.
Okay, we'll come back to that. So now you know who are you're meeting, and you know also, I hope that I am chairing the Danish European movement, so you know the moderator's position, and probably also I will have a couple of comments as we go. But first of all, I would like to kick off with asking you, Richard, to give us here the sort of the sentiment of the day in the United Kingdom. What is going on? What is the debate, and how do you see this going forward? Perhaps also slightly, but actually right now, just what are you seeing today in Britain?
Well, I think I should be very clear with you that I believe that Brexit is a catastrophe for the UK. I think it's bad for Europe and bad for the world, and I think it's really disastrous for the UK, and will take a long time to be corrected. I think that it was a very marginal decision, as you know. It was 52% in favour of leaving and 48% in favour of remaining. But at this moment, the most recent polls in the UK show that 57% of people in the UK now think it was a serious mistake to leave. That's well over half. But of course that doesn't mean that it will change, or that we will return immediately on the short term to Europe, or that Europe would have us back, which is even more important. In the European Movement UK, where I'm a board member of that, we debate a great deal about what are the best ways of reconnecting with Europe, re-establishing the closest possible relations between the UK and continental Europe, because that's our mission. And we, at the moment, believe in a step-by-step approach, trying gradually to re-engage with Europe. So, for example, to reinstitute the Erasmus program. It's a wonderful scheme for students to move between European countries and experience each other's countries and cultures. For example, on Horizon, this wonderful scientific collaboration, which is now threatened very much because of other difficulties, particularly with the Northern Ireland Protocol. To try to restore abilities for musicians and performers to travel around Europe. So step by step, and then whether it might be to do with farming or fishing or whatever, to rebuild relations with Europe. because I think, although there is this sentiment now that we made a terrible mistake, that there's a democratic process, and there is a need for the UK to renew itself before it can really be suitable for returning to a European community. Let alone the fact, of course, that everybody knows that the European community would be crazy to invite us back at the moment. You would be crazy, because we have a government which is not well intentioned towards the European Union, and the last thing in the world you would want is for the UK to come back in the very near future, and then to have further doubts and go back out again, and have another 5 or 10 years of this trouble. So I think the answer to your broad question is a belief amongst pro-Europeans, which are now the majority of people, that we should reconnect with Europe on a step-by-step basis.
Can I ask you just a specific question around the sentiment right now? I listen a lot to the BBC radio. I have this British mother complex, so I do need to understand what's going on, even if I'm very upset. And I listen to the fact that people are now talking about the risk of real hunger, people not being able to afford heating their homes, and so on and so forth. And that is sort of like what we are seeing in the rest of Europe, but just even more so. Is that the situation?
I think it is. At the last discussion there, just 2 hours ago, we were talking about the economic and societal consequences of Brexit. Brexit, of course, comes on top of the pandemic, the COVID, and the Ukraine war, and all the shortages of power and food and energy which result from that. It's been difficult to disentangle what are the consequences of Brexit and what are the consequences of these other massive issues. But it's gradually becoming more and more clear that Brexit has played a huge part in the problems that are facing the UK. And yes, this winter there is an expectation and a great fear about heat or eat. You either heat your homes or you eat. And for many millions of people, it will be difficult to do both, at least to the extent that people normally do.
And already now I learned that people were switching off their refrigerators to make sure that they could have in sweet.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us that insight. Now over to you, Aage, and I have to be curious, because for me it actually, I want to understand how can you still, with everything we see in the world around us, how can you still argue that EU is a bad project?
That's a really good question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
But I have just a small introduction here. It'll give you my background for how I'm thinking. But just to comment what you asked here about hunger and high unemployment and so on. And I think it's not only in UK because of the Brexit, because if you just look into EU and south of the Alps and look at Greece, look at Italy, look at Spain, look at Portugal, it's a disaster down there because of their connection to the euro. But we can come back to that one. Just to comment, I think it's a little bit too cheap to say that the English is in a better situation because of the Brexit when it comes to these kind of things. Okay. But first, thank you for being invited to participate in this year's political festival in Europe. It is important continuously to have the opportunity to debate at popular level. We as citizens of Denmark and Europe can gain and understand how we can jointly develop cooperation between the countries, not only in Europe, but equally global cooperation. As my Stine said, my name is Aage, Staun. And I'm here today to represent the people's movement against the EU. I have been a member of the people's movement for several years, and I've been part of the National Executive Committee and Vice President of the organization for a period of time. As a leader and businessman for many years, I have been opposed to the EU from the start, as the whole construction has been a misconstruction right from the start, without a democratic and popular foundation. My background for discussing the topic is my daily work as CEO in Denmark for the English Northern Irish company A.one. We are also responsible for the sales in Germany and East Europe. I'll talk about my experience before, during and after the UK choose to leave the EU and the impact it has on our business. The A.one. Group develops and produces special products for the feed industry globally. The period from 2016, where UK voted no to continue EU's membership until the 31st of January 2020, when the British completely left the EU, has been difficult to maneuver in as a leader in a Danish operation. Just a short remark, and I mentioned that before, the government and the British Parliament showed the best democratic respect for the people's decision and maintained the withdrawal from the EU, in contrast to our government and Parliament, which shamefully disagreed the people's decision when we said no to the Union in the Maastricht referendum in 1992. It shows the Danish political disrespect for our democracy and the Danish population. But it's not the topic today, so I'll go back to the agenda. As I said earlier, it was a difficult situation to maneuver in. Because of the difficult situation, I chose at an early stage to move the production of many of our products into Denmark. And today, approximately 75% of the product is now produced in Denmark. It turned out to be a good decision after what we have experienced in terms of getting our goods from England and Belfast through the port of Esbjerg. I do not know whether you can call it obstruction for the Danish authorities or the EU, or it just was a case of routines that has not been implemented in a timely manner. In the start-up phase, we experienced that goods that could normally be imported to our customers without problems were now stranded in the control in Esbjerg. Not because the goods were different, but because the EU did not have the customer codes in place. For a long period of time, therefore, we had to produce the goods on our factories in Belfast and transport them through France and Holland. This was possible because Northern Ireland was granted the status of continuing member of the customs union in the Brexit agreement. We are now avoiding porting goods through the port of Esbjerg. What is remarkable, it is that huge amount of goods that we export to UK can go through the port in Esbjerg, flows unhindered to customers and consumers into England. No paperwork. Those of us who work for the English Northern Irish group sometimes have a strange feeling. Has it been proven that one Denmark and the EU largest trading partner is treated this way? Or is it just an expression of the fact that EU's bureaucracy has trumped reason? Or is it a warning signal to other countries not to leave the EU?
Is that your remarks?
That's my start.
That's your start. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. And then I will just small appeal. Please, if it is okay, then from now on we answer questions. But that's fine. It's your statement and it's completely okay.
Yes, but you asked
I
why
want to-
I want still to leave the EU.
Yes,
Yes.
but I will stay with this because I want you to explain to us. I mean, what happened? What happened during Brexit was that completely respectfully, everybody said, okay, the British want to leave.
Mhm.
The consequences of that were clear. It meant toll. It meant a lot of different treatment at the borders into EU. It meant a lot of financial pains because some of the promises made by the Leavers campaign was what they also now say it probably was a little bit fake and not real. So when you say that it is strange that goods coming into the EU suddenly have to be differently treated, what had you expected after Brexit?
I expected that when we are leaving the EU, that they would have respect for the decision in UK and try to get the best out of it and build up cooperation instead of trying to, as I see it, scare other countries for doing the same. And it's a strange thing, that we cannot move goods in the port of Esbjerg, but what the goods that we are sending, billions and billions of kroner to UK every day, it flows just into it. So I think it's a matter of disrespect that the EU in some way will not acknowledge that there's another situation and they should try to get the best out of it.
Let me just ask you, Richard. Was it also a big surprise for you that there would be changes for the exports out of the UK?
Not in the least. No, not in the least. It seemed to me quite clear that if we decided to leave the EU, there would be most serious consequences for trade, both ways, both export and import. And that has proved to be the case. I mean, there's all sorts of other issues to do with haulage problems going through the port of Dover, which is such an enormously important channel. There's all sorts of problems because of the deterioration in the value of sterling, which has made imports for the UK much more expensive. There's all sorts of problems because of the lack of freedom of movement. And so there are staff shortages all over industries in the UK. I mean, even at airports now, it's very hard to find sufficient staff, and there are problems with travel because of this. So no, I'm not at all surprised. And I'm afraid I don't agree also that the EU has been obstructive. It seems to me this was a British decision to leave, in full knowledge of what the consequences would be. And I really can't criticise the EU. I think that the EU has acted reasonably to protect its markets, and we have done things like break international treaties. With the whole question of Northern Ireland, not imposing a proper border down the Irish Sea, which we agreed to do. So, I mean, I hate to say this about my own country, but I'm certainly not saying the EU is perfect in any way. There's all sorts of ongoing questions. But I don't think that there's a balance of blame on the EU.
No, that's also where I come from. But and then I would like to ask you the follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it was that there was some kind of arrangement, would that then also, in your opinion, should that also then suddenly include Canada, the US, other countries we could think about? I mean, there needs to be, I mean, the EU is a community. I hope you agree on that. It's a union.
Mm-hmm.
So, for you then, if it had to have a consequence, would it be sort of never-ended, or how do you look at that?
But I'll turn a little bit around. As I said before, we are an international company. we are selling products into Africa, Asia, Mexico, the US. So we are used to that kind of paperwork and so on. But how I feel and how we feel, it is that somehow EU is not flexible in this situation. UK has decided to leave, so why don't we just find a way of working it in a proper way instead of just be a bureaucracy, and fill out papers. And another thing it is that now you said that we are union and we are having trade agreements, and that's really some of the bad thing about EU, because we have custom. We're protecting ourselves, the farming industry especially, where we subsidize it with billions and billions and kroner. And we are now selling cheap products to Africa, to poor countries. And their farming industry, they can't compete with it. So we are just having a wall around us, and it hurts the poor people and the poor countries around it.
I recognize your answer. It's not, I'm definitely not disagreeing, because that is one of the consequences of being a community.
Yeah.
But I'm just asking you, and this is from an import point of view, do you want it to be the thing you're looking for? Should that be including other countries, or is it only the UK? Because that would be the question for Brussels. What is it only the UK? And the second question, why?
As I see it, and the gentleman here, he gave me a really good word. He said, we need a new Europe. And I totally agree. And you can't change EU from inside. So we have to, as I see it, leave EU together with UK and work together with Norway, with Greenland, with Scotland, with England. And if you look at this strong position where we have access to the Atlantic, so we have a very strong position if we go together in some way, because we have control over the fish, we have a lot of energy, gas, oil, and then we can, and then we'll come back to it, then we can have a position where we can go in and say, we want to have another Europe, but we don't want to have EU. So we have a strong position where we can go in and change it.
Now you had your say. Now I want to ask Richard, if you were to design a Europe, would you still believe in strong institutions? Would you still believe in strong cooperation and free movement of goods and capital and workforce? Would that be the Europe that you will design if you was to start from scratch?
Yes, it would be. The EU is, I see the EU as quite a fragile organisation. Some of the best things in life are fragile. They need to be nourished and looked after. And the EU is one of those. And I think that it is fundamentally a wonderful organisation. I might just have to come back on that in a bit more detail in a moment. And I think the UK had a remarkably good deal with the EU, with its opt-outs, not wanting part of the euro or Schengen, the rebate, amazingly. What was an extraordinary deal to give up? And I think benefiting from all the excellent institutions. Of course, it's bureaucratic, but 27, 28 nations come together to pool their sovereignty, or part a fragment of their sovereignty, is going to require an enormous amount of bureaucracy.
Yes.
It can't be done. One has to talk, one has to organise all sorts of things. So I think overall, in principle, it's a good organisation. Now, I had actually wanted to say something really on this specific topic of disintegration around Brexit. I don't know whether you want me to say something now, because that was the question really, was whether would you believe whether this might cause disintegration. So if I may say just a few words on that.
Definitely.
As I say, my own views about the EU are really very positive. I think it's one of the most laudable and progressive movements in history. I think the idea of neighbouring countries agreeing to share a fragment of their sovereignty in order to achieve peace first and foremost. Secondly, mutual prosperity, and also to underpin the whole thing with a set of fundamental values, respect for the rule of law, democracy, telling the truth, and so on, is vitally important in this world. And I think this needs saying. I think people who defend the EU do not say this enough. These fundamental values are what the EU is essentially about. And certainly for somewhere like the UK, which has no written constitution, and currently has a leader and a government which does not tell the truth, and which breaks the rule of law, it is absolutely fundamental to be able to go back and to impress the importance of these values. Brexit was a traumatic shock in the UK. It was greatest for us, but it's a shock for all of you too, and it ripples around the world. I think rather wonderful the impacts on the EU and continuing member states have really been to achieve greater solidarity, which I've been very impressed by. Of course, world events and the Ukraine war has demanded great solidarity, and the EU has shown that when it's held together. So I think in answer to the question on disintegration, I think that Brexit does not provide any rational basis for believing other countries will leave. But the underlying question is about populism and nationalism. And there are these very strong forces in the world at the moment, even in democratic countries like Trump in America, Johnson in the UK, and some member states as well of the EU, for what I would call hyper-nationalism and populist elements. And those are the reasons why they could be called disintegration. Nothing to do with Brexit. It's because of those things. And I think they are a deeply serious threat to the EU. To me, it is completely unacceptable arguments like America first, UK first. We are not in that sort of world. We're in a world where we need to work together. And I think all the events which have happened since the Brexit referendum in 2016 argue for more regional collaboration and more, if possible, international collaboration. Pandemics, migration, climate change, digital and new technology issues, and the Ukraine war. They all demand that we work much more closely together. So my prescription is to enhance citizens' understanding of the EU and its values. We need a greater depth of understanding, particularly among young people, as to what the EU stands for. And that's fundamentally important in avoiding disintegration. And you had your conference on the future of Europe, which was most excellent start, and now it must be followed up. So there are crucial questions, I think, for Europe about whether to hold a convention, the possibility of treaty change, and really I think Europe must identify the crucial competencies where it's necessary to act in a supranational way, and then to make sure that the EU has the capacities to give effect to those competencies. Finally, I think that we must all be forward-looking. This is where you and I agree. I think I did talk about the need for a new UK and a new Europe. Things are not static. And the UK must change and develop before it's fit to be considered back into Europe. And of course, during that period, the world of 10 years, Europe itself will change. Yes. And I think we must recognise we're in a dynamic situation. And it may be that some of the things you say about necessary change in Europe will happen during that time. So I actually didn't talk about the UK rejoining Europe or rejoining the EU. I talk about us rejoining the European mainstream, however that emerges.
Okay, thank you. Then I would like to ask you the question. If you look at the instability, let's call it that has been created out of Brexit, and that I agree with, it lives also within Europe, with some member states questioning rule of law, questioning the value of sort of democracy and freedom of speech as we know it. But that instability, that if we think 10 years back didn't look like that, who does that actually favor? Who does it serve? The instability in the Europe that we know today. Oh.
Or when you're talking about stability.
Instability,
yes. And as I see it, it started when some smart people demanded that everybody should join the euro. Because especially the countries south of the Alps, they were not ready to adapt this currency. And it's still a huge problem for EU. It gave them Greece, it gave Spain, it gave Portugal and Italy big problems. And these problems are not solved today. And that's why EU had to go out and put up a loan for 5,600 billion kroner to support that currency.
Let me just ask you to answer my question. This instability that we see today, who does that serve? Who's interested? I mean, we could debate afterwards the reasons, fine, but...
When you're talking about instability, are you talking about UK or are you talking about EU or the world in general?
No, I'm talking about the EU. The instability that came out of Brexit, that is also embedded in some of the things that we see today, which, again, the reaction has been, we work closer together, we do more together, fine, but if you still look at the instability, whose interest would it be to unstabilize Europe?
That's really a good question, because if you should be egoistic, if that's the right word in English, when you have the instability and you don't believe in construction, it would be forced to more or less collapse, but it would be in a really bad way of let EU disappear. So this instability, I don't think that anybody has that as a goal to unstabilize the EU. What happens because they force these big countries to go into the euro.
Okay, Richard, the question to you: in whose interest would destabilizing Europe be?
Well, I mean, I think you'll know from what I've said that I believe it would be in no one's interest. I think the world at the moment is a regional world. I think that is the reality. I'd rather it was a totally global world, but it is actually a regional world. Whereas the US is an enormous force. There's Russia, there is China, there's probably India, and there's Europe. And I think that the way the world is working, and with the lack of democracy in some of the many of the non-European parts of the world, that the holding together and the stability of the democratic centre in Europe, to me, is hugely important.
Yes. Okay, and then I'll add my own opinion to some of this area. I'm quite sure, listening to many of the debates around this political festival of Europe, I mean, the only person who would be interested really in destabilizing Europe is obviously Putin. I mean, he's not able to get his own act together. People in Russia are not happy and all over the place. And he has been working continuously on this project for as many years as I can remember. Anyway, I want to turn the debate now on to the audience. I want to give you a chance also to have opinions and come in with questions. for this very good panel, and I do think it is good that we have a blend of people that go in different directions here. Anybody wants to have a comment? Question?
Well, for both of you, but maybe for all, is it realistic to leave Europe and be able to create something new, or will that be unrealistic? Because is it realistic within a time horizon of 25 years to do that?
Yes, why not? We could see that UK took the decision, they left. So why shouldn't we be able to follow them? We have a strong position, we have a global economy, and we could easily set up a close relations to UK, and Norway could be included, Sweden could follow us, or why not Finland? Because we have more or less, as I see it, we have a democratic fundament that's more or less based on the same principle. We build up our democracy from the bottom up and ask the people. And not to be negative, but we have seen other countries who more believe in strong government, a strong person who can more or less let the orders or the way that the country shall work, it will come from upside down. And I think that the Nordic countries and England, they have a tradition for building up. And that's some of the thing that really annoys me, that I have a feeling that this is not the way that EU are thinking. It's more or less up from top and then downwards. So that's a big difference. And that's why I see that we somehow must work together, the Nordic countries, England, UK, or Ireland as well, and then try to be the leader of forming a new setup, a new Europe, and not try to reform EU from the inside, because it's impossible.
Richard, you want to give a...
Well, in part I agree, in part I disagree. I think that where I disagree is to do with separating the Nordic countries. I think that not only do I don't like that on just grounds of discrimination, but also I think it's far too small a power in the regional world that we've been talking about. So I don't agree with that. I think that the idea of consultation with citizens is incredibly important, trying to get more of a bottom-up feel. I think the EU has again been rather admirable in its conference on the future of Europe. This was maybe, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but over a period of a little over a year, the EU invited all European countries, and that's not just member states, but non-members as well, including the EU countries, to submit views on any aspect of the EU through an online platform, multilingual online platform, and through innumerable focus groups and debates. And I think this was a very admirable initiative, and I followed it very closely. And we in the UK submitted lots of views through this platform. So I think the EU has the right ideas. Now, whether it implements them or not is another question. And the jury has to get out on that. Because a lot of these issues that came up, for example, demanded a stronger Europe in quite a lot of areas. People wanted not quite a federal Europe, but a Europe where the centre had more power and where just perhaps one or two nations could not prevent something happening.
Exactly. Let me come back back to that.
Yeah, we'll
We'll come back to that. But I just want to sort of collect things a little bit and say that if you walk around here and you see what this is, and hopefully it will spread, this is a prolonging of exactly that process. What I found slightly lacking in the process was people actually meeting. It was a lot of things being put into the system, and that is fine, but I wanted people also to see each other cross-border, not only within the country, but also cross-border. Yeah. So, and I think that is probably what we will see more of, hopefully, that people connect and talk with citizens in other countries. And then I wanted to turn to exactly the issue. If we look at what is actually happening right now in the EU, and we might disagree dramatically on this, but actually the togetherness is more obvious. People are now openly talking about, do we actually sometimes need to have decisions taken by the majority? Because we need to get going. We need a common foreign policy, obviously. You have a war on our continent. And all these things have actually, the COVID situation was also obviously bringing us closer together. These movements, would that be, in your opinion, pushing the UK or dragging the UK closer to the EU, or would it be counterproductive for the debates that we're having right now?
Well, I think that the European Movement UK, our philosophy is to encourage step-by-step rebuilding of Europe. And in that sense, I think anything such as you're describing is very positive. I think alongside taking individual issues, I am working in the UK with my colleagues to try and get a deeper understanding of the EU and the EU's attitudes amongst British people. And so anything such as conferences here and discussions and mingling, I think is incredibly important. I mean, I can't tell you how lovely it is for me to be here. I've been here now for the last 4 days. And the number of conversations I've had, and people have just come up to me and talk as I've been sitting on a bench, and come and talk to me, has been wonderful because it doesn't talk about political things. And this is not currently happening in the UK. There is a feeling of going in people, I say bring to this expression I use, and not looking outwards to the world. So for me, these things are very refreshing. The more the better.
Og så spørgsmål, jeg har set, du vil spørge noget. Okay. Jeg skal lige have Aages kommentar til det her. Sorry, in English. What is your impression of happenings, festivals like this? Would you see that as a good idea to see it spread across Europe so that people meet?
Yes, of course, and that's what I said from the start. It's crucial to avoid war, to have a really good globe to live in, that we communicate all the time, and this is a really good place to do it. And it's spreading all over Denmark. We have festivals on Boardmember. We have it in Ski where I come from. And that's the way to do it. And because we have to discuss how we will develop our country.
But would you also go to a festival, if there was a festival like this in Germany or in Holland, or would you also go there and visit it? Talk to your fellow citizens?
Yes, of course I would do that, but just an example, and it scares me a little bit, because now I come from the Folkebevægelse mod EU in Danish, and we had a festival in Stine here in this summer, and it was on our referendum about getting rid of the forbehold. And in the tent, they had invited 2 who voted for yes, and it was Peter Thomasen and the man from Greece, Yes,
So I
that's
get
right.
it, yeah.
Yes. And we thought it was a wrong way to have a debate about this referendum. So we were 3 elder people who went down there to hand out some of the brochures because we couldn't be a part of the debate. It was just, yes people. And suddenly we were attacked by the police and we were forbidden to be there. We were thrown out of this event. And I sent in a complaint to the police, but now it's because it's more or less our democracy right to be there. And now that the case is at what we call the Staun in Denmark, because we won't accept that we were just kicked out of the police. And afterwards the police has said that it was not the right way to do it. They were not allowed to do it. So they excused for their way to handle it.
But that's good then.
But we keep up, because I keep up and say, I won't accept it. I would like to know where come this kind of order from, where they have not the right to get rid of us. And if this is the way that they want to have a debate, then I think it's really, really dangerous. So, back to your question.
Thank you.
Of course, I will defend and go wherever we can to have this debate, but be careful, because there's some people somewhere who don't want that we have a debate where they are just
But
that
all
way.
that I can very well follow your line, but I can also tell you that my position is very challenged by threats and by all sorts of very strange things. So I just think we should stick together, have open communities, have the freedom in the democracy and freedom of
I
speech.
totally agree with you.
Yeah, and it's fine, you've
I totally
stated your
agree.
point.
But it's just,
we
I say
understand.
that we have to be,
Sure.
because we have to fight all the time.
But this
because
is why you're here.
Yeah, yeah.
You're invited here and
Yeah.
you can exactly state your decision freely. Kasper?
It's just to actually to you, Aage, because there's something when you talk about Sweden and Norway. Norway is not a part of the EU, and you talk about Ireland, and we should join up with them, work together. But we already do that. Most of the countries you mentioned, we are actually a part of the EU, but in the Nordic region, we have a very, very both historical and present collaboration. We have the Nordic Council of Ministers. We have special deals with each other, where we move back and forth, study and so on and so forth. What I just don't understand, what is to want more or less, or
We
don't have now?
We have to expand this cooperation, and we can't do it within the EU because we have to follow the laws that they send us. You know that 80% of the laws that are implemented in Denmark, it comes from the EU, and 90% of the laws is just passed our parliament. It's just a stamp that's put on it. So it's not the way that we can change anything. So we have to get rid of these laws as the English has done, and then start from scratch. And what I'm talking about here, it is that if we want to have a negotiation with EU, we will have a very, very strong economical and social platform, because we have, as I said before, Greenland, we have Faroe Islands, we have access to the Atlantic, we have enough energy, we have resources, so we have a really, really strong position to see how the new Europe should be formed. And we have a mutual interest here, because UK is outside now. So we need something else, and they're going to go in again. So how shall we change Europe and build up a new Europe? That's a a way that we could do it with the Nordic countries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I take just one more comment? I'm sorry. I think it's too easy for you to say 80% of the rules, so on and so forth. Can you mention just like very quick, just by the name of it? Maybe just one or two laws that you really don't like.
I don't want to do that, go into detail, but it's a statistic. You can go in and read it. It's common knowledge.
But can I turn this question also to Richard, because that rhetoric I can hear was also part of the Brexit debate. And I followed also afterwards people in Britain saying, oh, we thought we would have less rules. And then now they just have new rules. What do you think about this? I mean, we need rules to govern ourselves. And do you see it possible, feasible at all to think of a new tiny union from the Nordic perspective?
Well, there's two questions there really. I mean, on the subject of rules, all I can say is from the UK's perspective, that Brexit has caused much more regulation, not much less. But on the question more of the size of any new Europe, as I said, I see the world as regional at the moment, and I think that it would be very unwise for the EU to break down into smaller component parts. I think we need each other very badly. I suppose I was actually very interested in Macron's idea about also having a more of an alliance of democratic countries across Europe, whether or not they were members of the European Union. That wouldn't clearly replace the European Union, but the idea that there is a greater formality about everybody for whom democracy is the absolutely fundamental principle does seem to me to be totally important when one looks at the other regions and the way that sadly America has gone under Trump and may continue to go for a few more years, we don't know, and of course what's happening in Russia and China. I do think that being a big democratic bloc is the most important thing.
So the pressure on Europe, in your opinion, is definitely increasing. And the democratic Europe you're talking about, so the pressure from the outside, and for you as I listen, it is not less union, it's some areas of different union, but it's definitely union. And it's also obviously over time gradually bringing Britain back. The same question to you, Aage. What is your answer to Putin, to Xi, to perhaps Trump? What is your answer to this?
That's really a big question. But if you look back many years, you have seen the European dominating Africa, dominating China, dominating India. And we have to realize that these countries now is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And the only way that we can avoid that we'll have a great war, it is that we accept and talk with these people. We can't
So you would give up Ukraine?
we can't just build up weapon and weapon and weapon. We have to talk and have to accept that they don't accept anymore that the European and the American, they talk down to them. They were up on a level where they feel that we have, where we're discussing the world's situation
Totally to the point. So you would talk to Putin, you would give up the position that EU now has towards the war in Ukraine.
Putin is not a nice guy. But if you look back when the Soviet Union collapsed,
Yes.
yes, we had they were on their knees we had a big opportunity to have a peaceful Europe and Russia. But what did NATO do? They took the Estland, Lithuania, included NATO, put trucks in. We sent pushed into.
But excuse me for a reason. For a reason.
We pushed them on Poland to put up rockets. So to some extent we fenced them in instead of being a little bit clever to go in to have a more dialogue about it. And that was the reason that Putin could pop up and get it, because we put a pressure on it. And I don't agree that because Putin is not allowed to do that. No. But look at from a perspective of the Russian, how they did it.
Now we ask Richard, what is your position towards Putin? Do we fix it?
I agree that there were some seemingly very serious mistakes following 1990 and the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it seems to be a deep diplomatic failure to have recognized a continuing threat from Russia. That's easy to say with hindsight, but that's what diplomats exist for. They should be there to see the future and to take the necessary action, or advise governments on the necessary action. And so I do agree with you that there was a failure to foresee a lot of what's happening. But the best force for responding is a combined and a Europe with great solidarity, because that is going to have far more impact on affecting change or influencing change in Russia than countries acting together or in smaller groups.
That is a very good closing comment. I want to just give you a last chance to have a point of view or to ask a question. Yes, please.
I will try to put it here. I have an idea, and you can take it with me.
Listen.
Yes.
I'm not hearing so
the British had left the EU, and a lot of people in the EU are not as happy as they want to be with this business. But if we take a picture, we have lived in different places against our lives, good places, not so good places, and it has given us a lot of experience. And I think also we can take that picture to the EU. There is a lot of experience in the EU and in the UK, and you have a lot of experience. And my idea is, why not say, now we give it 10 years, we find some good architects, political of course, architects. Let's come with a lot of new ideas. We make a new way to do this. Take Turkey, Norway, maybe even Russia, invite them, and they had to say, what could we expect of this? And then we could see, we have now a new house for the Europe, all the Europe maybe. And then,
okay,
and
I
then,
think we need to
and then we could ask the people in Europe, what do you think about that? What are your opinions of this?
Very short answers because we're running out of time.
I see that you are here about a new house, a new Europe. It's excellent. So, and it's only a matter of talking, dialogue. Yeah?
Well, I think the huge question you asked is whether one should seek to involve Russia in a new Europe at some stage. And that is an enormous question. It's debated at one of the other debates that I listened into. And I think the majority opinion at the moment, and I think it's right, is that we are in such a critical stage with Russia that is unthinkable at the moment. But if we can see change in Russia, change of regime in Russia, your idea is well worth thinking about.
I think that was a very good concluding remark, and I think just to make sure that we pay tribute to that there's actually a war going on right now at the borders of Europe, and Russia is the aggressor, and we have to be very, very careful about any kind of wrong signals from this festival. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for a very broad debate. It took us a long way around, and also welcome very much for questioning the values and the ideas of the construction of the European Union. Thank you, Richard, for taking the way all over here. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you with us. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you.
I would just like to say I think you have all been the most wonderful hosts, as well as audience. I felt extraordinarily welcome here.